Hi, my name is Yasmina and welcome back to my channel. So one of the questions I get asked most, or comments that I get a lot, are of people saying, I really want to write a book, but I don't have any idea. How do I come up with an idea for a book, for a novel? And that is a very loaded question, and there are so many different answers, depending on who you are, depending on what the purpose of this book or of you as a writer is, what you think it is. There really isn't one answer for this, but in this video I'm going to go over some of my tips on how to get story ideas, some of the things that I do in order to get inspired for book ideas. So maybe this will be helpful to you to find out how you can come up with story ideas. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So before we get into the actual tips on how to get story ideas, I think you really should ask yourself, why do you want to write a book? What is the purpose of this? Because if the answer is to make $1 million or to become famous, then you're probably going about it the wrong way. You're probably in the wrong business. Try to do something else, because writing a book will not make you a millionaire. That literally happens to a couple of people. This is not a money-making business, okay? So that's the reason why you want to write a book, then I would reconsider. Otherwise, any other reason is valid, and it doesn't really matter why you want to write it. If it's because you want to challenge yourself to see if you can write a book, is it because you think it's fun and you were inspired by your favorite book and you want to write something like that? If it is because this is your dream and you've always wanted to be a writer, all of that is valid. But there's a lot of things that we want, but we never put in the work to actually get there. And so it's great that you want to write a book, but you have to actually get down and write it. So where do you get the idea for this book that you want to write? I'll go over the most obvious answer first, and that is media. TV shows, movies, art, paintings, obviously books. All of these things can inspire a fantastic idea to you, but you have to consume a lot of this. You have to consume a lot of media, you have to read a lot of books, you have to watch a lot of TV shows. And if you already do this, then that's great, because maybe at some point something will spark this idea in your head. And it can literally be anything. It can be a theme, it can be a character, it can be a word or a sentence in a book, but there's no way of knowing unless you read a lot of books, unless you watch a lot of movies, and in general consume a lot of art and a lot of creative things. So go out there and just, live your normal life and consume a lot of media, and maybe one day one of these things will inspire a fantastic idea for a book that you want to write. The second most obvious answer, and the number one piece of advice that a lot of people give those who want to write, is to live. Live your life. Go out there and experience things. Because the other most said piece of advice is to write what you know. And if you don't know anything, how are you gonna write it? So go out there and experience things. If you want to write about heartbreak, how can you really do that realistically if you've never had your heart broken before? I mean, I really can't tell you how to live your life. Just don't worry too much about it, is basically what I'm trying to say, because normal life gives you a lot of ideas for books if you know how to look for them. So one great way of doing it, and something that has worked for me, I've written a book entirely because of this reason, is to travel. Travel, see new places, experience new things, talk to new people, and you will definitely get inspired for something. So my first book that I ever wrote was because of a trip that I took, or I guess several trips that I took to Vienna, Austria, and I loved that city so much, and I loved the atmosphere of that city so much during wintertime that I wrote an entire book about it. And that was the first idea that popped into my head. I didn't know what the book would be about, but I knew it was going to be set in Vienna, and it was going to feature some of these places that I've been to. And it would be during winter, because that's when I went there, and that's when I fell in love with that city. Go travel, go to cool places. You will definitely find inspiration for some awesome ideas, or just settings in general. The next thing that kind of relates to this whole traveling idea and to the whole, go out there and live your life idea, it might sound a bit creepy, but it's to people watch. Watch people live their lives. If you don't want to write about your own experience, or if you don't think that your own experiences are, interesting enough or worth writing about, then watch other people. Other people might give you the perfect idea for a book. And I'm not saying that they will give you the idea. I'm just saying that by watching them live their lives, by watching them have awkward conversations, awkward first dates, interesting interactions between them and their friends, that can spark a lot of ideas, and you can then have ideas for characters that you want to write about. So the simplest way to do this is, I don't know, to go to a park, sit on a bench, read a book, and then just listen around you. Watch what other people are doing, and that can give you quite a few interesting situations. Or go to a coffee shop and read a book or write something and then listen to what people are talking around you, because a lot of the times you will find that by eavesdropping you will hear a lot of interesting conversations that might spark an idea for you. I think a lot of people do this anyway without really thinking about it. We listen to what other people say around us and we notice things around us. I think that's actually the biggest tool that a writer needs, is to notice things. Be mindful of what's happening around you, because that can give you a lot of insight into how people think of how life works, about different things that you might not otherwise know about. But just by listening or being aware of what's happening around you, that can really help you write your book. The next way you can come up with story ideas is, again, something that I have personally experienced, and I've written a book because of coming up with this idea in this situation, and that is dreams. So I've always been fascinated about dreams. Even when I was younger, I used to write dreams down, and I used to try to do lucid dreaming on myself, and I was always completely fascinated about dreaming. A few years ago, I had a very, very vivid dream, one that I remembered completely once I woke up. It wasn't just bits and pieces of a dream, it was an entire story. It was an entire movie playing in my dream, and as soon as I woke up, I knew this was something, because it was so vivid and so connected. It was just like sort of experiencing a movie in your dream, and so I knew that I wanted to write this down, and so I did. And that became the base of what is now my YA fantasy series that I'm working on. Now, it changed a lot from that original idea, like it changed completely, but the basic premise of it, the premise that the entire dream was based on, and the premise that I still have in my YA fantasy series is still there. And that was because I had this really vivid dream that I wrote down. So the important thing here is to write it down. Have a little notebook, or just have your phone obviously on your nightstand. You probably already do, but as soon as you wake up, and if you know you can remember that dream, and if it was a really awesome dream, write it down, because you will forget otherwise. There's no doubt about it. But I'm so happy with the story that I have now, and the story that I'm working on that came from that dream. So again, pay attention to your dreams, and if you think you have a really good one, then write it down, because who knows, it might spark an idea for a book in the future. Okay, so now you've gone through all of these situations and you have bits and pieces of things. The most important thing is to write it down. Write it down as soon as it comes to you. If you're out and about and you hear a conversation, you think, oh, that's quite a cool intrigue, I should remember that. No, you will not remember it. Write it down. Take out your phone, take out your notes app and write it down. Or if you have a notebook with you, write it down. You will forget it otherwise. And so the way I do it is, every time I have this little spark, if it's a small thing, if it's a big thing, it doesn't matter what it is, I write it down. And in time, you will find that you have a list of a lot of random ideas, whether it's themes, whether it's characters, settings, plot, dialogue, anything. And so every now and again, look at that list and you can start seeing some pieces that can fit really well together. And so you take this character, you take this piece of dialogue, you take this setting, and you keep taking these bits and then form them into a cohesive story. This is what I've done for many of my books. I take bits and pieces and then try to find a way, put them together into a well-rounded, cohesive story. And that has worked pretty well for me so far. So I think that's a good technique. But in order to have these ideas, obviously they have to come to you first. So again, try to do all these things that I've said, and then eventually you will have bits and pieces that you can puzzle together and form a great book. Another important thing I have to mention is you have to remember that there are no original ideas. No matter how much you think your idea is amazing and original and no one has ever thought about this before, trust me, they have, and they've probably already written about it. Don't be bummed out that someone else has had this idea before, and don't be bummed out that someone else has even already wrote this idea before and maybe it even became a bestseller. The point is to make it your own. No story can be told the exact same way, it's in the details. There are so many books with similar premises or even identical premises, but they are completely different experiences, they are completely different books. No two authors can write the same premise the same way. So your idea, even though it sounds exactly the same like someone else's book, will be inherently different because it's you writing it. So don't worry too much about your idea not being original. The whole point is to write from your eyes or from the eyes of your main character, and just by doing that, your story will be completely different from someone else's. Okay, so important things to remember from this video. You can't force ideas to come to you. Don't worry too much about forcing yourself to come up with an idea. Go about your life and just try to pay a little more attention to things. Try to pay a little more attention to your thoughts, to things that are going on around you. And then if you think of something interesting, write it down. And that's how you get the best story ideas. Because then, like I said, you will piece them all together and you will make this awesome book that will sell a lot of copies. It won't make you a millionaire though. So if that's the reason why you want to write a book, think again. But yeah, that was my advice on how to come up with story ideas. And like I said, this is how I literally write my books. This is how I come up with the ideas for my book. And they have worked out so far, and I think I've written some quite awesome books, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm incredibly biased. However, this is how I went about it. So I hope this was helpful to you, and it might have eased your mind about trying too much to find a good story idea. And I hope it gave you some ideas on how to go about getting some of those good ideas for stories. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you next Monday with a new video. Hope you enjoyed it and have a nice day. Bye!